Man, I will tell you what, Colts Nation, Mondays are a lot better after a victory. Now, how about this stat right here? I was listening to Shane Steichen's post-game press conference. Not a press conference, it was the locker room celebration. And he tells the boys, he says, we got 6 sacks, we allowed none, and we won the turnover battle. Now, that right there, no matter how you look at it, is a recipe for victory. It doesn't matter who you're versing. It doesn't matter if you're versing the Super Bowl champions. If you're able to sack their quarterback, they can't sack yours, and you win the turnover battle, that's going to result in wins very, very often. And Indy was able to take one on the road against a division opponent. Now, I know Houston is not very good. I understand this, but we shouldn't be upset that we won. We shouldn't try to put an asterisk on it. At the end of the day, every team in the division is 1-1. And I know what you're thinking. Houston's 0-2. Houston's not a real team, okay? They're not really in the AFC South. The AFC South is a 3-team division. You have the Titans, the Jaguars, and the Colts. And they are all 1-1. And going into this game, the second I saw that the Texans didn't have Laramie Tunsil, they were on their third-string center, and that we had Moss and Quentin Nelson playing, I knew right then and there Houston had absolutely no shot. And sure enough, Indy came out like we were shot out of a cannon. And I feel like games like this are the reason, or at least are a good example of the reason that teams are moving towards offensive-minded head coaches as opposed to defensive-minded head coaches, because I think you saw it on full display right here. You had 2 rookie coaches, one of them in Shane Steichen and one of them in D'Amico Ryans. And I have all the respect in the world for D'Amico Ryans, but you saw a Colts team that looked like they had an identity, or at least a plan in terms of what they wanted to do offensively, as opposed to the Houston Texans, who didn't exactly look like a fully smooth running operation. Now, credit to CJ Stroud, where it is due. I thought he did the best he could with what was provided for him. I really like what he brings to the table, but ultimately, the win is all that matters, and this kind of did feel like one of those games. Don't forget, Houston got this thing to 31-20 with how many minutes left on the clock? Almost 10, right? It was somewhere in the 9s, 9:30, 9:50. Point being is we're looking at this as we're kicking their ass the entire time, and before you know it, we're looking at a situation that we've been looking at repeatedly over the course of the past couple of seasons. And if you're anything like me, you were kind of in that mode of, oh, here we go. Here come these Colts. And sure enough, Houston was able to move the ball on us through the air late in the game. But ultimately, we ended up coming out with a win as opposed to a loss. And that is even with the Anthony Richardson concussion. I mean, how much more can you ask for out of an Indianapolis win after what we went through last year? I thought this was an awesome, awesome win. Now, there was some good, there was some bad. We're going to talk about all of it in this episode right here. But before we do, I always have to introduce myself, particularly that the season just started. I expect I'll be seeing some new faces around here. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts cast. I ask a few things of anyone that comes by. If you're enjoying the video, go ahead, shoot it a like. It gets me out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. You can subscribe if you want to be a part of the journey. And the third thing I ask, the most important thing I ask, is that you enjoy the video. So I want to start on the offensive side of the ball because the big story is around Anthony Richardson and his availability moving forward. Now, I will tell you this right now. Of course, that is not ideal. Of course, that's concerning. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's not. But I think we saw pretty clearly. Now, we know that's against Houston. How many times do I have to say it? We have more wins in Houston since the year 2020 than the Texans themselves. I believe they're now 2-18-1 in their home stadium since the year 2020. I understand all of this, but Garner Minshew showed you that he can run this offense, and he can do it at a pretty high level, all things considered. He fits into what Steichen wants to do. I think a lot of people hear Steichen talk about explosive plays, and they think about getting the ball down the field. And it's not to say that that isn't important, but there's a way to make explosive plays on short completions and setting guys up for yards after the catch. Last week, we saw it on a couple of occasions. Remember, Josh Downs on the little slant over the middle that popped off for a 30-yard gain, that screen from Michael Pittman. Whether or not that thing was 30, 40 yards in the air, those ended up being 30, 40-yard gains. Those are explosive plays. I think Minshew is good at throwing guys open, and I think as long as we are moving the ball smoothly on the ground, Minshew could run this offense at a pretty high level while we're waiting for Anthony Richardson to come back. In the world of backup quarterbacks, there's no one I would rather root for than Garner Minshew, Uncle Rico, never thrown an incompletion in his life. This is the guy right here. You got to be happy about that. And speak of that running game, Zack Moss. Now, I said coming into this game, I said if Zack Moss is able to average like 4 yards a carry, there's really no good reason the Colts would lose this game. I think I went as far as to say there was no chance, but I don't remember what it was verbatim, but that's how I felt. Ultimately, this team would have beat Jacksonville, in my opinion, if they were able to run the ball. You had Deion Jackson, who I like, I respect, and I'm not trying to call him out. He choked like a damn chicken in that game. I know it when I see it. That was a choke job because Deion Jackson is better than that. He had a big opportunity and he wet the bed. Now, Zack Moss comes in here with Quentin Nelson, and for me, I mean, Zack Moss might just be the X factor of this offense, and it is kind of one of these weird things where you go back to the running back argument, the JT and the contract, and you think not for anything. If we got that out of Zack Moss for an entire season, how much better off would we have been with JT? Would we have won that game any more than 31-20 with Jonathan Taylor out there? Now, I don't say that as a slight at Jonathan Taylor, but you look at him posting the story on Instagram where he's training in the Colts facility, and you think of the idea of Anthony Richardson, some of the pieces in this offense, and then you plug in Jonathan Taylor, and you have him and Zack Moss in the running game. This offense has a chance to be a very, very well-oiled machine because, as I said at the top of the show, all you guys that want to talk shit about the line, fine. At the end of the day, 0 sacks allowed, over 4 yards a carry. I know that your eyes, your emotional eyes, tell you otherwise. The Colts offensive line is still amongst one of the top lines in the NFL. I would say probably in the top 10, most certainly in the top 15. You could probably even argue them up towards the top 5. Not quite in the top 5, but right in that range. This is a very above average line that I think will get better as the season goes on. So that was awesome to see. Now, the tight end depth that we have is proving to be very useful because you're looking at the receiving core and it's starting to look like, in terms of consistently moving the chains throughout the course of the game, that it's really Pittman and Downs, and Pierce kind of comes in for a chunk play once in a while and they just target him when they can. The tight end depth for me is very, very useful. I mean, Steichen, what a great job he did in this game on a number of different occasions. I mean, the one that comes off the top of my head is forcing the Texans to use a timeout, going from punt formation and then running all the guys in from the sideline. I mean, it's just the little things like that that force a team to use a timeout. I mean, that's just one example. Steichen put on a masterclass in this game, if you ask me. He did next to nothing wrong at all. And again, the way he's using the tight end, I think, is really helping us make up for a lack of experience, a lack of high-end talent in the receiver room. Josh Downs doesn't look like a rookie, but not yet is he one of the best slot receivers in football. I think he has the potential to get there. But right now, he just looks like a guy who belongs out there. And we'll see as the season goes on, particularly if we get another game or two of Minshew, what Josh Downs is able to do. Pittman, I can't say enough about what he's bringing to the table. Now, Wesley French. Ryan Kelly also left with a concussion. Wesley French, in my opinion, really did not miss a beat at the center position. Now, is it always going to be perfect? Not quite, but I thought he looked more than viable as a replacement at center. So it looks like we might be okay there. Now, injuries on the offensive line are going to hurt any team. I think if you're looking at the Colts, maybe even particularly so, but as of right now, we are healthy. And for all we know, it's not like we all are lineman encyclopedias. Maybe there are people behind some of these guys that could, if they had to be plugged in for a short period of time, get the job done. All I know is that the offense, as I said in the preseason, as I said last week, has the potential to be very, very, very high level. I think we saw it in this game. And with that running game going, this can be a well-oiled machine. Really opens up what Shane Steichen wants to do. And when you have a guy like Garner Minshew who has a strong understanding of the offense, I mean, it's just a recipe for success. Curious to see what Minshew could do here. We have a game next week against the Ravens that's going to be a test for us. Now, I want to look around to the defense because, man, through 2 games, they look pretty damn good. And Shaq Leonard, while he looks solid, doesn't even look like he's fully regained form yet. Zaire Franklin really has become the heart and soul of this defense. But this D-line, when I did my preseason analysis of this defense, and I keep giving myself the pat on the back here. I think, I don't know, I've been right about a lot of things with these Indianapolis Colts, and I just feel like I want to point it out. The D-line has been spectacular. I said, in my opinion, my prediction is that they were going to be one of the top 8 units in football, and here they come out on a day like today with 6 sacks. Kwity Paye coming out playing well. Had a little scare with the knee for a second. I got nervous given his injury history, but ultimately, he came out, played a spectacular game. The depth is spectacular from Ebukam to Taven Bryan. I mean, you go all the way down to the 6th, 7th guy in this defensive line, and these are dudes that are really putting out good output. And the linebacking core is clearly very, very high level with Zaire, Shaquille, and EJ Speed. I mean, you're looking at a defensive line that is the real deal, and you're looking at linebackers that are playing the part. So now you just look at the secondary and you say, you know what? Have they done better than we expected? I would say so. Yeah, I think they've been better than we expected. Now, yesterday, Darrell Baker Jr. had a tough time, but this is a guy that's trying to gain some experience, and that was always part of the course for the secondary coming into the season. So for me, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe he had a bad day. I didn't even see them go Dallas Flowers' way. I thought Kenny Moore was excellent, not just in coverage, but in run stopping as well. And I thought the safeties, for the most part, did a good job. Yes, Nico Collins got loose, but ultimately when you get a lead like the Colts have, you are going to soften up the coverage just a little bit because you're not trying to get beat down the field. So it wasn't perfect on the defensive side of the ball, and there was a hint of that giving up a lead, but ultimately, unlike last season, it ended with us getting the job done. And for me, I can't be much happier with what I saw out of the Colts right here. I mean, as of today, we're tied for first place in that division. It is what it is. Now, this is a 17-game season. We've got a long way to go, but ultimately, we stand where we stand right now, and I'm never going to be upset about a victory for the Indianapolis Colts, and not for anything. A win like this, which the Colts have not had in a meaningful period of time, has us feeling real good about what we are going to bring to the table next week against Baltimore. And we'll see how that goes. I think Baltimore's defense this year has not been the elite Baltimore defense we know. Of course, they're formidable, but it's not what their kind of brand is. We have a common opponent in Houston. And if you ask me, we kicked Houston's ass more so than Baltimore did. So does that math work? I don't know. But all I'm saying is, as of right now, we'll see how the injury report goes throughout the week. But Garner Minshew, Anthony Richardson, no matter which one starts next week against Baltimore, even though we're in Baltimore, I'm pretty confident that we could be competitive in this game. I think you look at what Jacksonville was able to do to Kansas City this week, and I looked at the film and I said, not for anything, Jacksonville's play calling on the defensive side of the ball was spectacular, and they were able to hold the Chiefs to under 20. You wonder if that defense is a little better than expected. All of a sudden, it makes the output last week look just a little bit more impressive out of the Indianapolis Colts. Again, we made the Texans defense look like a scrub squad, and that's their coach's identity. So, got to be pretty happy with what we're getting out of the Colts right now. And I'm not going to say we're not winning the Super Bowl or anything like that, but I mean, again, as I said at the start of the season, they're looking like a team that could end up flirting with that 500 territory. And for me, with what we expected coming into this season, I know some of you are going to be like, you have to win every year. Listen, you're living in the land of make-believe. You're in la-la land. That's not how the NFL works. Not everyone wins every year. And ultimately, there's a building process that comes with it. The Colts look to be slightly ahead of schedule on a quote-unquote rebuild, at least early in the season. We'll see if they could keep their wits together, because ultimately we know that that's the struggle that they've been having going forward. But those right there are my takeaways from that game against the Texans. I'm a pretty happy guy, and this is a pretty happy Monday. And this right here was the entire episode. Thank you so much for being here. Of course, if you haven't liked, subscribed, all those things, whatever it is you want to do, I would greatly appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed the show. My name is Justin. This right here is the Ride the Bench Colts cast, and until next time, go Colts.